What are we doing? Do we have some kind of special destiny? Why, although we are genetically astonishingly close to the apes, to chimpanzees and gorillas, just 1.2% difference in the DNA, why is our behavior so completely and utterly different from the behavior of the apes? Why do we have religion and spirituality and symbolism? I wanted to explore all of this, and I decided quite a while ago that I would do a book about this and devote 3 or 4 years of my life to investigating it. As I started to investigate the subject, I quite quickly found where I really needed to focus, because the story of the human career, if you follow the anthropologists and the scientists, is a 6 million year story, starting from the last common ancestor with the chimpanzee. But frankly, for 99% of that 6 million years, it's an incredibly boring story. Nothing happens. Slow anatomical evolution until our ancestors begin to look like us. But the behavior is just unbelievably dull. They work with the same kind of stone tools for literally millions of years. They never innovate. They have no creativity. Even when they start to look exactly like us, even when the human brain size is identical to ours, which is about 200,000 years ago, this boring, uncreative, dull-witted, lacking in innovation, this kind of dull behavior just continues. And it continues all the way down to really the very recent past, just 40,000 years ago. And then suddenly, it's as though a light has been turned on in the human brain all around the world. And really, it all seems to happen at once. And we see the most extraordinary evidence that a new kind of creature is on the planet. That creature looks just the same as he'd looked for the last 140,000 years since we became anatomically modern 200,000 years ago. He looks the same, but his behavior is totally different. And we see the great cave art of Europe introduced around 35,000 years ago. Fantastic works of art. Picasso, when he went into Lascaux Cave, came out and said, "We have invented nothing." Those ancient artists were far ahead of the artists of today. And we see this rock art appearing all over the world, not only in Europe, but in southern Africa, in Australia, in Asia, anywhere you care to look, in North America too. This extraordinary art appears, and at the same time, our ancestors become innovative and creative. We see dramatic changes in their hunting strategies. They become much more efficient. They become really sharp. And they believe in life after death. We know that because they bury grave goods with the dead. Clearly they believe that the soul continues on a journey after this life, something that they never thought of before.
But only with this new brain, only with this new type of person did they start doing that, right?
That's right. It's like a new type of person has appeared, and yet the person looks identical to the person that had already been on the planet for tens of thousands of years. So something changed, something happened to our consciousness, something altered the way we look at reality and altered the way that we behave, and that change changed everything. It set us on the road to modern mankind. It was the single most crucial evolutionary step in the entire story of the human career, and it happened less than 40,000 years ago. So that's where I decided quite quickly that I needed to focus this investigation on. I needed to understand why that radical change took place and how it could possibly be explained. And that set the scene for the investigation that I explore in Supernatural.
Graham, do you think that change was biological, in that there perhaps was already a ticking clock within that person, that human being, and then all of a sudden, the alarm went off, and so this new person came out?
Well, I think that it's clear that the human brain had already evolved to its modern capacity, size, and structure by 200,000 years ago. There were no further physical changes in the brain. What happened, as I say, that was 200,000 years ago. Another 160,000 years had to pass, and that's an awfully long time. Another 160,000 years had to pass before that already established brain started behaving in the way that we expect human beings to behave. So some dramatic incident affected human consciousness, some dramatic incident or experience which rapidly spread all around the world. And I think I know what that incident or experience was, and I go into this in great depth in the book.
Well, you had said earlier, what on earth are we? And another question could very well be, what not on earth are we?
Well, yes, this is point, and perhaps we'll come to it later in the interview.
Yeah.
Because in this dramatic explosion of consciousness, we must seek for explanations. We must try to understand why it happened. And it is one of the explanations for why it happened was provided by the Nobel Prize winner Francis Crick, following on from his work on DNA. Astonishingly, although Francis Crick was the ultimate mainstream scientist, indeed he defines what the mainstream is, Francis Crick did not believe that our DNA had evolved on this planet. But I'll just plant that thought with you at the moment.
Sure.
And perhaps we'll come back to it later on.
Were you influenced beyond Francis Crick of other people? I mean, the Jacques Vallée, the other researchers of our time. Did anybody have an effect on you?
Yes. Jacques Vallée's work was very important. And the reason that Jacques Vallée's work was so important was because Jacques Vallée noticed the astonishing similarities between modern accounts of abductions by aliens and much more ancient medieval, particularly medieval European accounts of fairies and elves and abductions by beings of that sort. Now, I came to this because as part of my research, I had to work with shamans all over the world. And shamans often take hallucinogenic drugs, plant hallucinogens, to enter altered states of consciousness, where they then encounter beings that they believe are spirits. And these beings give them teachings about how to heal the sick in their society very often. And often the information is absolutely hard and solid, useful information, which leads to the shamans mixing up combinations of plants that really do contain powerful medicinal effects. Now, what I found was that these spirits that shamans encounter, and we'll perhaps come on to the fact that I myself have encountered them in altered states of consciousness, that these spirits very closely resemble the beings that modern humans call aliens. The whole idea of an alien abduction, of a person being drawn up, perhaps on a beam of light into the sky, or climbing up a thread of light into the sky and entering a spaceship, and they're small beings with triangular heart-shaped faces and dark eyes, do strange experiments on them and stick needles into them and put implants into their skin. Astonishingly, exactly the same experiences are had by shamans in the Amazon, shamans in the deserts of South Africa, shamans in Australia. But they don't call them aliens, they call them spirits. So what's happening is that the human race, we human beings, are having extraordinary experiences that we interpret through the framework of our own culture, but the experiences are all the same all over the world. It's just what we call them is different. In medieval Europe, as Jacques Vallée realized, we call them fairies and elves.
Right.
In the shamanic cultures, we call them spirits. And in North America and Britain today, people who've had the experience of being abducted on what they think are UFOs call them aliens. But maybe the answer is not any one of those things. The first thing we have to realize is that there's a unique, common, shared human experience. And I believe it was that experience 35,000 or 40,000 years ago that switched on that light in the head of the human race. I think it was contact with these supernatural beings, with the experiences that one can only have in altered states of consciousness.